The new Ravenloft book for D&D 5.5 is out. I got early access to it, and today we're going to do a build that combines two of the new subclasses from it, the actually new Hollow Warden Ranger, and then the reworked Phantom Rogue. Spoiler warning, it's a pretty dang potent combo. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody, so here at D4 I like to do character builds for my favorite role-playing games. I like to crunch numbers about them and theorycraft about them, not so that I can tell you like the right or the best way to play a character, but to explore one potential way to build something in the hopes of creating a character that's both fun but also powerful to play. So if you also enjoy building characters for your favorite role-playing games or theory crafting, or you're just looking for tips or ideas on how to build something that you are thinking about playing, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I'm so glad you're here. So thank you for watching. My name's Colby. Right, so Ravenloft, The Horrors Within. There is a lot to love about this book, you guys. There's some stuff that to me is a little less impressive as well, or at the very least a little more limited in like mechanical power, but often very full of great flavor and creepy horror vibe. And hey, that stuff is great too. I'm actually doing like a reaction video with Kelly and Monty from the Dungeon Dudes to all of the player content stuff. It's going to be on their channel today, actually, the day that this video is released anyways. I'll try to link to that video up here and in the video description as soon as I've got it. But yes, of course, as always, the thing about the new content that interested me the most was all of the new player options, and none more than the new subclasses, right? Especially the one of two subclasses that was actually new, yeah? And not just a rework of previously released in 5e subclass, right? And yeah, I'm talking about the Hollow Warden Ranger. When this thing was in Unearthed Arcana, everybody was pretty excited about how powerful it was. And spoiler warning, while some things arguably got a little bit nerfed, other things got a little buffed, and we're going to talk about most of them. So kudos, I think, to Wizards of the Coast for giving us a Ranger subclass that feels really good and potent and powerful, and is not quite so tied to Hunter's Mark like it was in Unearthed Arcana, as we'll get into, and like so many Ranger subclasses are. As for the Phantom Rogue, and, well, every other subclass outside of the Hollow Warden and the Reanimator Artificer that are in this new book, I feel a little torn on what Wizards of the Coast is doing with the Phantom Rogue and with all of these old subclasses that are getting updated for this new Ravenloft book. On the one hand, I really love to see them updating older content and subclasses, and usually, mostly, I think, improving on it, whether in mechanics or in flavor or both. And I think that's generally what they've done with these updates. And I want to see more of that from Wizards of the Coast. I kind of want pretty much every like old subclass updated for 5.5. On the other hand, I understand why some people feel frustrated by the way Wizards is kind of trickling these updates out in new books with often fairly minor changes and then selling it as new content rather than releasing wholly new and hopefully more interesting subclasses like, yeah, the Hollow Warden Ranger, the Reanimated Artificer. If I had my druthers, man, I wish I could find those dang druthers and have them again. Where did that phrase come from? I'd make Wizards of the Coast just update every old 5e subclass that hasn't yet been updated, like all at once, ideally for free on D&D Beyond or something, and then just put out new content only from here. I mean, I understand why they don't do that. I'm sure they would talk about time and resource constraint, and the naysayers among us would accuse them of corporate greed, etc., etc. I don't feel like getting into the weeds of all of that argument, personally, but I will just say this. Dear Wizards of the Coast, please get updates for older content out a little more quickly and regularly. Maybe these new drops that you've been talking about on D&D Beyond lately could be a great place for that, right? And then yes, also, please keep getting us brand new player options because we love those and they're fun. But yes, today we are combining one of each, the brand new Hollow Warden with the updated Phantom Rogue. Can the whole here be greater than the sum of its parts when combined? Can we finally get a ranger? Can we finally get a rogue who can hit as hard as some of the hardest hitting builds in the game if we put them together? Stay tuned to find out. All right, I proudly present D&D build number 258, the Phantom Warden. Hollow and goodbye. The Deadly Hollows. The Phantom of Sneaky Hollow. That's a good one. Don't fear the Sneaker. More cowbell. The Hollow Horror. The Butcher of Barovia. The Mistwalker. Nice Mistborn call out. The Phantom of the Opportunity Attack. Ranger in the Night. Oh, there's your outtake song. Thanks, as always, to the fantastic suggestions from Discord. This week, I think I gotta go with the one from Druid's Flame, the Ravenloft Reaper. Descriptive and a little clickbaity, I hope. Anyways, huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for the fantastic artwork that he put together for the build this week. He does this every week. He's so talented. If you'd be interested in checking out the other stuff that he creates, or potentially trying to reach out to commission him to create some art for your character or even your entire party, I will put links in the video description as always on how to do so. But before we get into the build, I am thrilled to tell you all about a new sponsor for the channel today. Archvillain Encounters Death and Beyond by Archvillain Games, which feels incredibly on point thematically for the Ravenloft focused build that we're doing today. So, alright, this crowdfunded project, currently in its final days on GameFound, has already passed its funding goal by like 4,000%, literally. And it's easy to see why, because this project looked freaking awesome. Archvillain Encounters is essentially a series of boss boxes. They have 15 boss boxes available. You can get them individually or bundled to save money, and each box is like a little treasure trove of deadly D&D encounter goodness compatible with both 5e and 5.5. Now, they actually sent me one, and it's been sitting here in my office for the last few days just waiting to be opened, but I wanted to do a little unboxing on camera while I talked about it, so shall we dive into this thing? Here we go. This one is the Nethergaze boss box. All right, so each one of these boxes is going to contain, first of all, a huge 75mm base PVC boss mini. Looks like they don't have them printed up yet, so that wasn't included in the box. Just kidding. They sent me the mini. It was just in a separate box, and it came a day after I recorded that. So let me just show you guys. It's so awesome. Check that out. It's disgusting in the best way. All those tentacles and just grotesqueries. But then an individualized adventure book of 50 plus pages filled with lore and DM tips to help you run the boss encounters. Stat blocks for the boss, for other monsters, for minions. New magic items are in here. New spells. And by the way, these encounters always take place in a multi-phase battle. Super cool. We've got a dry erase battle map, perfect for running the encounter. A little deck of cards for the new magic items, among other things, I'm guessing. And even like tokens for all of the little new monsters and minions and things that you can use on the map. But yeah, each one of these bosses look incredible and terrifying in the best way. From Adrimal the Godslayer to Vorgaheel the Vampire Dragon. So cool. You can run these boss encounter adventures as like a standalone one-shot, or you could string them all together in a campaign of their own, or even plug them into your existing campaign, because each boss encounter is set up to be balanced for 3 different levels of play. So you can tailor it to your party depending on where they're at in their character level advancement. And I mean, if you're looking for more than just a big boss in your box, they actually have 2 more boxes available. They're Foes and Legends boxes that have 6 smaller minis who can be used either as enemies or even PCs, as well as a QR code to scan to give you a PDF with all of the content necessary for the Foes and Legends boxes and how to use them in your game. So, if I were you, I would go check out Archvillain Encounters on GameFound right now before the campaign ends, because there are only a few days left at the time of this video release. And listen, after the GameFound campaign is over, the prices of these boxes is gonna go up. The MSRP for these boxes is $55, but you can get them for $39 if you back them now. And you can get them from even less than that if you bundle them together and get multiple, right? So huge thanks to Archvillain Games for the support and for this fantastic box that you sent me. I'm definitely gonna be looking for a way to use these at my table. And congrats on the massive success on the GameFound campaign. I can't wait to see the finished product when they're all done. All right, let's get back to the build. At level 1, for our starting class, yeah, we're going to start Rogue. I mean, you could start Ranger, but as I often say in a build where I'm eventually going to take Rogue levels, I typically like to start Rogue since doing so gets us an additional skill proficiency, as well as pretty much everything that we need to be a really great scout and trap finder and lockpicker with just a single level. So, assuming that we're going to be filling that role in our party, yeah, I would start off as a Rogue, I think. As for our species, anything will work, honestly, and there are lots of great options. I almost went human today just to get that extra origin feat, which is always nice, plus an extra proficiency on a skill monkey is also always appreciated as a human, right? My favorite pick mechanically, though, would be Goliath, as it so often is, but not fire. No, I would rather go Hill Giant for our ancestry here, since Hill Giant Goliaths can proficiency bonus times per day, force an enemy they hit with an attack roll to just automatically be knocked prone. No save, which is amazing, just so long as they're large-sized or smaller, right? And since we are planning on being a melee striker today, that's fantastic for us since attacks against prone enemies made within 5 feet have automatic advantage. As for our background, as always, I say, take an old one or a custom one if you can or want to, but if not, the Mulharandi Tomb Raider background will work just fine for us since it gives us both the ability score increases we want and the origin feat we want. And frankly, I mean, a Tomb Raider feels pretty thematic here, and you could definitely work that into your backstory for the subclasses that we're going to be playing as. As for that origin feat, yes, it's going to be lucky, as it so often is. Big surprise. I mean, yeah, I love having advantage on attacks when I'm building damage-focused characters, and lucky lets us have advantage on a d20 roll of our choice, proficiency bonus times per day. If you'd rather have alert or tough or magic initiate or anything else, you should get that instead, and rest assured you will be just fine. For our ability scores, I assume that we start the point buy method as always and say let's take a 15 dexterity and a +2 there, 15 constitution and a +1, and then a 15 wisdom. Part of me was tempted to try and get that wisdom to 16 instead of con for a number of reasons, but since I'm not starting fighter, though I was tempted, I don't have constitution saving throw proficiency and thus no bonus to concentration checks, so it felt pretty important to get my constitution bonus to at least 3. To say nothing of, what that does for our health otherwise. For our starting equipment, I'm going to say short sword, scimitar, and studded leather. Yes, we're going to be a 2-weapon fighting slicer dicer, and these are the best weapons for that for us, since at Rogue One, we get weapon masteries, right? And we will want to grab mastery in the short sword, so we can enjoy the Vex mastery when we hit with it, giving us advantage on our next attack made against that enemy before the end of our next turn. So much advantage. Is this too much advantage? I don't think so. Remember, we can only knock enemies prone and use luck points proficiency bonus times per day, so unless you're only running like a single combat encounter per long rest, you're going to want other ways to reliably get yourself advantage on your attacks outside of those limited use options, to say nothing of, times that you run into huge or gargantuan enemies, right? And so you can't Hill Giant Goliath trip them. But then, yes, we also want to be mastering the scimitar, which gets us the Nick property, which says that we can make that additional attack that we get from dual-wielding light weapons, right, just as part of our action, instead of needing to use our bonus action for it like usual. 2 attacks right at level 1 while keeping our bonus action free is pretty stellar. We also get Thieves' Cant here, which is that special secret language that rogues use to write coded messages to one another. And then we get Expertise, which says, we can double our proficiency bonus for 2 skills that we're proficient in. I always say PYF here, pick your favorite, but as a rogue, if you're going to be the party scout and lockpicker, I'd personally pick 2 from Perception, Stealth, and Sleight of Hand. We will be able to pick up the 3rd one that we don't get, though, before too long. Finally, at Rogue One, we get the quintessential rogue ability, Sneak Attack, which will add 1d6 for now to 1 attack per turn that we make with either a ranged or finesse weapon, so long as we either have advantage on the attack or the target is standing next to an ally. Thank goodness we have so many ways to get advantage. And I would like to thank goodness and my lovely, amazing, wonderful channel members and patrons for their support of this channel. So if you wouldn't mind, let me give them a quick shout out. You guys, thank you so much for your support. I couldn't do what I do without you. I will say that every week, because it will continue to be true. You are the best. If you are not a member or a patron, I'd love it if you'd consider supporting the channel in this way. There's a little button down there. It says join. You click on it or go to my Patreon link in the video description. It'll tell you about all of the perks that I offer to members and patrons, including access to the library of write-ups that I do for each of these builds to help you recreate it yourself a little more easily if you want, access to the community Discord server, and access to the live monthly Q&A hangout sessions that we have. If you can't or aren't interested in supporting the channel in this way, that's okay. I'm glad that you're here watching. Liking, subscribing especially are also great ways to support the channel, so thanks for doing those things too. All right, at level 2, with our most important early rogue features secured, it's time to start taking those ranger levels, I think. So yeah, at this point in our champion's career, they may have started out as a simple cut purse or spy or maybe just knavish Robin Hood-like, right? But for some reason, they're starting now to take a great interest in not necessarily nature and the wilds, though that could certainly be part of it, but it's kind of a very particular aspect of the wider world. Our interest is in the dark things and dark places of the world. Maybe not the Underdark necessarily, though it could be that, but anywhere you find monstrosities and deep old magics. The forgotten or avoided places of the world. That is where we want to explore. Those are the places and beings that we feel drawn to. Perhaps to protect, perhaps to embody. Or perhaps we don't quite know yet what is drawing us there, but yes, as a Ranger 1, we get 2 more weapon masteries. I'm gonna say, PYF here, pick your favorite. I'd probably grab some ranged options, maybe a thrown finesse weapon like a dagger, and then sure, go for longbow or heavy crossbow when you need something with a little more range. We also get a favored enemy here, which says that we always have the Hunter's Mark spell prepared and can cast it twice per day without spending a spell slot for now. Yes, we'll probably be making some use of this particularly divisive spell on this build. Just in case you forgot or needed a refresher, you cast it as a bonus action, it requires concentration, you put it on an enemy, and thereafter get to add an extra d6 of damage to every attack you make against that enemy, and if they die, you can use a bonus action to transfer it to your next target. Yeah, the fact that the damage doesn't really scale kind of sucks until very late game. Yeah, the fact that it always requires concentration kind of sucks. Yeah, the bonus action requirement to transfer it kind of sucks. Yeah, I'd probably homebrew it at my own table to lose some of the problems with it when you gain more ranger levels. But despite all of that, it's still a solid first level spell that gets better the more attacks your character makes, and we will be making a lot of them. Speaking of spells, we get the other first level ranger options here, and I think I'd be going for the usual suspects. Absorb elements, right, for a nice defensive reaction to give you resistance to elemental damage you've taken. Cure wounds, of course, for a really nice heal. Goodberry for another decent heal, plus some utility, right? Entangle is solid area control. And jump is a good one, both for kind of extra movement, but also a little potential utility. At level 3, we would be a Ranger 2, and that means we get a fighting style. I would for sure want to grab 2-weapon fighting here so that the attack from our offhand, right, that nick attack, gets to add our dexterity modifier to the damage 2, which, it can't do up until this point. And then we also get Deft Explorer, which lets us learn 2 more languages of our choice, and then 1 more expertise in a skill we're proficient in. So now we can have sleight of hand, stealth, and perception. Everything that an expert rogue needs. Level 4, we would be a Ranger 3, and that means we get our subclass, and of course we are going Hollow Warden, and since this is the first time ever using this subclass in a build, we've got to read the flavor text here. Draw on the might of ancient wild terrors. Legends tell that the most ancient and bloodthirsty terrors lurk deep within the old places of the earth. Hollow Wardens venerate and draw power from such beings, transforming themselves into merciless and monstrous guardians that stalk jagged coastlines, steep mountain crags, and other dark and wild places. We don't just protect the monstrous things of the world, we become them. I love it. All right, so Hollow Warden Rangers get a couple of features here. First, some new spells. At this level, it's just Wrathful Smite, which feels thematically appropriate, but since like all Paladin Smite spells these days, it requires our bonus action to use when we land an attack, right? We probably won't use it much. It does add an extra d6 of damage and can potentially frighten an enemy, but we might have a much better and easier way to do just that, since we also get the Wrath of the Wild feature here, which is really good. It tells us that as a bonus action, we can expend a use of favored enemy, so twice a day for now, to take on a ghastly or monstrous transformation for a minute or until we are incapacitated. And it gives us three really sweet buffs. Ancient Armor gives us a +1 to our armor class, increasing to +2 at Ranger 11. That's nice. Prowling Retribution lets us take an opportunity attack against an enemy within 5 feet of us if they simply deal damage, any damage, to us or to one of our allies. Very nice. And then Unnerving Aura lets us force a wisdom save for all creatures of our choice within 10 feet of us every single round when we transform and at the beginning of our turn, or they're frightened of us until our next turn. Amazing. No concentration required for this. Every single round. That's sweet. Frightened causes them to make attacks and ability checks with disadvantage, right? And prevents them from moving closer to you. That said, it would be a lot more potent if we could force the save like at the end of our turn so that we could try and position ourselves advantageously first, right? As is, if enemies are frightened, it seems likely that they'll try and move away from us on their turn, and then when our turn starts, they won't be in the aura any longer, so we won't get a chance to frighten them again. But it's still great. I mean, any melee enemies that are running up to attack us are going to have to make that save when it's our turn. And, I mean, I'll be honest, I would have expected Wizards of the Coast to tell us that we could choose one of these 3 buffs to enjoy at any one time. That's actually what I just assumed that it said when I first read it, when I first started doing this build. The fact that we get all 3 is, frankly, kind of jaw-dropping to me, and this feature alone makes the Hollow Warden Ranger the new strongest subclass in D&D, I think. And yeah, if we're trying to maximize damage as a Hollow Warden, that Prowling Retribution buff that greatly increases our chance of getting an opportunity attack on our turn, that's a solid damage increase, especially if we're taking rogue levels, right? Anyway, for those curious, yes, this feature got a little nerfed and a little buffed, but mostly buffed from the version that we saw in the Unearthed Arcana. There, it said that we could transform whenever we cast Hunter's Mark, so we could benefit both from the spell and this at the same time with a single bonus action. And then it gave us both the armor buff and the Unnerving Aura buff together, but the enemies affected by the aura weren't frightened, they simply had to choose between an action or a bonus action. And there was no Prowling Retribution feature, which is kind of my favorite thing now. So yeah, as much as I'd love to have multiple benefits that automatically turned on when I cast Hunter's Mark, I like this version a lot more. And actually, I mean, I love that it's not directly linked to Hunter's Mark, meaning that if I wanted to cast another concentration spell, I could and still get this benefit. Thank you, WotC, for listening to the feedback and not tying everything to casting Hunter's Mark. Even if, on this build, we might want to use Hunter's Mark sometimes, right? Moving on, at level 5, we would be a Ranger 4, and that means we get our first general feat, and I'm going to take Dual Wielder, but it's not a no-brainer, not by a long shot. So first, here's why I want it. It raises our dexterity to 18 and then lets us make another attack with our bonus action so long as we've taken the attack action and attacked with a different light weapon. I don't want to get into a fight here with the doubters about how this interacts with Nick, but essentially, since we're not needing our bonus action for that Nick attack and making 2 attacks with our action at the moment, with this feat, we should be able to use our bonus action, which is freed up, for a 3rd attack on our turn. The problem here is, as I've said, I might want to use Hunter's Mark sometimes to get extra damage per hit, but since Hunter's Mark takes a bonus action both to cast and to transfer once our target is dead, there's a big conflict there. When I use Hunter's Mark or Hex on a build, I assume that every other round we'd need our bonus action to cast or transfer the spell. Meaning that since our Wrath of the Wild feature also takes a bonus action to get going, right, only lasts for a minute, we wouldn't be getting a bonus action attack from Dual Wielder hardly ever, under those assumptions at least. So the questions here are twofold. One, should we take a different feat, since our bonus action is so often going to be spoken for? Maybe. You could go for Mage Slayer or Skulker or something else to raise that dexterity by 1, sure. There are plenty of great options. Or, alternatively, 2, should we concentrate on something other than Hunter's Mark? That's also a maybe. Next level, we'll get an option worth considering. I'll talk about it a little more in the damage report, but for now, just know that dual wielder is one option among many here. I'm going to take it because it looks a little better than anything else on the spreadsheet, but that's not to say that you might rather take something else instead, and that's fine. All right, at level 6, we would be a Ranger 5. That means we get extra attack, so we can now make 3 attacks with our attack action, right? Thanks to our best friend Nick. And then we get second level spells. Hollow Wardens get Alter Self for free, thematically appropriate for sure, but mostly just useful outside of combat for us. Beyond that, I would grab Aid for a nice heal and increase to max hit points for 3 party members, Lesser Restoration for a cure-all that's nice to have when needed. Pass Without Trace is great for a party-wide stealth buff, Spike Growth is some fun control, and potential damage, but above all, I'd consider, Summon Beast. Summon Beast requires concentration, but it lasts for an hour. It summons a little pet that can deal some solid damage on our turn, no action or bonus action required by us. If you summon a land beast, it gets advantage on its attacks if one of its allies is standing next to its target, including us, right? Now, it unfortunately uses our wisdom modifier to determine its hit chance, but if it hits, it does a respectable 1d8 plus 6 damage. So, should we concentrate on this or on Hunter's Mark now? Let's discuss it in the first damage report since we are now at level 6. All right, in a nutshell, Summon Beast looks slightly better on paper, but only slightly. We're talking like 0 to 3 more damage per round on average, depending on the enemy's armor class. The reason for this is simple. It doesn't interfere with our bonus action, leaving our bonus action free to use for a 4th attack every round after round 1 when we're getting our transformation going, right? That said, there are some major reasons to favor Hunter's Mark here instead. First, it will do more damage if we don't have to transfer it to a different enemy every other round. So it'll be great for like big, beefy targets, boss fights, etc. Second, and probably more importantly, our concentration checks are not great at the moment. We have a +3 from our Constitution modifier, and that's it. No Warcaster, no Constitution saving throw proficiency, and we're building for melee. I mean, sure, we get an AC bump from our transformation, but the reality is that you're probably going to lose concentration somewhat regularly, I would think. Summon Beast is a 2nd level spell, and we only have 2 of those per day, and if we drop it, it takes a whole action to cast again, which really wouldn't be worth it in the middle of a fight, right? Alternatively, losing concentration on Hunter's Mark is a lot less painful. We've got more 1st level spell slots to spare, and we might have been needing to use our bonus action to transfer it on our turn anyways. So, since I'm working in a lab here, sure, I'll assume that we've got Summon Beast already active when the fight breaks out, since it lasts for an hour, right? And that we're using it for the fight, but just like know thyself, right? Know your table, know your build, know the encounter. If you really want to rely on this beast for whatever reason, consider starting with a level in fighter instead of rogue, for example. If a fight breaks out unexpectedly and you don't have your beast up, don't spend an action summoning it, just use Hunter's Mark on round 2. Like I said, the damage difference between them is very minimal. Alrighty then, assuming Summon Beast, this is what combat would ideally look like for us. On round 1, we'd run up to get within 10 feet of as many enemies as possible and use our bonus action to get Wrath of the Wild going. Hopefully frightening some bad guys, right? Have your beast run in and make their attack with advantage, assuming that you're standing next to their target, which you should be. We would then make 3 attacks with our short sword and scimitar, applying a d6 of sneak attack damage on the first attack that hits. On the first attack, use a luck point for advantage, and if you hit, try to knock him prone via your Hill Giant Goliath feature. You'll then enjoy advantage on your other 2 attacks, but Vex will help us out here on at least one of our attacks if we don't want to or can't afford to use our Goliath feature, right? Just make sure that you go short sword, scimitar, then short sword at the end because you want your last attack to be with the Vex weapon. Because on the enemy's turn, they'll stand up and will likely be trying to deal damage to someone, right? If they succeed, Prowling Retribution will trigger, giving you an opportunity attack against them, and if you ended your turn with a Vex weapon hit, you're going to have advantage on this reaction attack too, since that Vex buff affects the next attack you make against the creature, right? Before the end of your next turn. Oh, and yes, since we'd be making this attack on someone else's turn, we would apply Sneak Attack again. I'm going to assume that we'll get a reaction attack 50% of the time. And honestly, that feels a little conservative to me, but I don't know, maybe not. All the enemy has to do, though, is deal damage to you or an ally. even to your summoned beast. It can be an attack, it could be a spell. Now, they might miss all of their attacks, and everyone might make all of their saving throws against whatever they're doing. And maybe there's no half damage on a save. But I have to believe that at least half of the time, they're going to be hurting someone. Anyways, on rounds 2 through 4, you just rinse and repeat, except that now we would get a 4th attack on our turn since we no longer need our bonus action to get Wrath of the Wild going. Make sense? Okay. If we averaged all of that over a 4-round combat encounter, then, against an enemy with a 10 armor class, we would do 51 damage per round, and against a 15 AC, it would be 45 DPR. And that is the hardest hitting, mostly ranger build that I've made for all of 5.5 to date at this level. And that makes me super happy. Yeah, in fact, there are only 2 builds using official D&D content that I've made thus far that outdamage this at this level, at level 6. The BFG and the Chuckadin. Of course, your mileage may vary here, right? Your beast might get killed, or you might lose concentration, above all. So, yeah, if you wanted to go Hunter's Mark instead, the average was like 47 and 44, respectively, which is still very, very good, and probably a little more reliable if we're being honest. Plus, we are a really fantastic roguish scout with respectable survivability and even throwing out some consistent debuffing via our fear. Plus, we've even got some backup healing and buffing options. This thing is like the complete package, and we're just getting started. So, where do we go from here? At level 7, I think I'd probably go back to Rogue. There are lots of great things in Ranger still, not least of which the Hollow Warden's level 7 feature, which lets us add our Wisdom modifier to our Constitution saving throws, which, yes, would include concentration checks, so definitely at least consider that, right? That level 7 feature also lets you regain hit points when you make attacks while transformed if you're bloodied. So yeah, again, really solid feature. Dead Rangers do 0 damage, and dropping concentration sucks, all of those things. And the other features they get are nice too and worth pushing for, but I don't have time to go over all of them here. But if we wanted to just go full glass cannon all out for damage, yeah, the more rogue levels we have, the better, especially because of how often we're going to get opportunity attacks, and there's some cool, fun stuff for Phantom Rogues too. So let's just dive back into Rogue now, just to see what it looks like. And as always, when you are playing this character, you can decide to wait a couple levels or more if you want. Cool. All right, as a Rogue 2, then, we get Cunning Action, first of all. Yay, another use for our bonus action. This lets us dash, disengage, or hide as a bonus action. And I don't know how often we'll be using it, but, you know, in a pinch, if we really need it, it'd be nice to have. At level 8, we would be a Rogue 3, and that means we get Steady Aim first up, which says that if we haven't moved, and we don't move, we can use our, you guessed it, bonus action to give ourselves advantage on our next attack. Thanks, no thanks. But then, yes, we get our subclass here, and we are going Phantom Rogue, of course, so let's read the flavor text on this too, shall we? It's my first Phantom in 5.5. Embrace death and wield ghostly power. Some rogues traverse the veil between life and death, shepherding opponents to the grave and slipping through the world as undetectable as a spirit. In these pursuits, a rogue might discover a mystical connection to death itself. Such an individual becomes immersed in negative energy, infusing their strikes with deathly energy and stealing knowledge from souls who have passed on. Thieves' guilds value rogues of this persuasion as highly effective information gatherers and spies. Nice. So, how are you playing this out in-game for your character, I'd like to know? Has one of the monstrosities that you've met taught you the ways of communing with spirits? Or increased your understanding of the spiritual realm? Or maybe just made you way better at ushering your enemies into that realm? Regardless of your reasons, as a Phantom Rogue, we get a couple of nice features here. First up, Whispers of the Dead gives us an extra skill or tool proficiency, and we can swap it out with just a short rest. That's nice. But then there's the Wails from the Grave feature. This says that when we deal sneak attack damage on our turn, specifically, alas, it doesn't work when we take a reaction attack, right? But it lets us target a second creature within 30 feet and deal half of our sneak attack damage to them. It's just half of our sneak attack dice rounded up, so just a 1d6 for now, even though at this level our sneak attack damage does go up to 2d6, remember. And we can use Wails of the Grave dexterity modifier times per day. At level 9, we would be a rogue 4, and that means we get another feat, and I think we've just got to bump our dexterity to 20. I would love some more dexterity half feats, but there are too many other like defensive-minded feats we need, so here we are. And it's just in time for our next damage report. Since last check, our tactics haven't really changed, but we've capped our dexterity modifier, added a d6 of damage to our sneak attack, whether on our turn or an enemy's, and added the ability to do a d6 of damage to a second target on our turn as well. That extra damage isn't a ton, but it will be a nice way to take out like an almost dead enemy without having to burn additional resources or actions for it sometimes, among other things. That'll be pretty nice. But at this level, averaged over a 4-round combat encounter, against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 67 damage per round, and against a 16 AC, it would be 60 DPR. Total damage, right? With just a teeny bit of that going to a secondary target. Which is, again, really solid DPR, though it hasn't scaled quite as well as other tier 1 builds, moving us down more to like maybe the bottom half of tier 1 compared to others to date at this level. Still better than any other ranger or rogue that I've built to date. And yeah, again, using Hunter's Mark over Summon Beast is still only like 1 to 3 points lower, so no big deal. Okay, what about tier 3 of play? Well, at level 10, we would be a rogue 5, and that means we get Uncanny Dodge, which lets us use our reaction when we get hit by an attack to have the damage. Alas, we're hoping to use our reaction a lot for opportunity attacks, but this will be nice as an option if and when we need it. We also get Cunning Strike, which says that when we deal sneak attack damage, we can give up a d6 of that damage to do something extra. And here's the potentially cool thing. We're not limited to how often we can use Cunning Strike, right? The only requirement is that we deal sneak attack damage. So not only could we also use this on our reaction if we land an attack, but as a Phantom Rogue, I think you could probably use a Cunning Strike option on that second target as well if you're doing half of your sneak attack damage to them. Now, there might be some debate on this. The wording for Wails from the Grave is this. Immediately after you deal sneak attack damage to a creature on your turn, you can target a second creature. Roll half of the number of sneak attack damage dice for your level, round up, and the second creature takes necrotic damage equal to the roll's total. So technically, does this damage count as dealing sneak attack damage? It doesn't exactly specify that, right? It just says that we roll half our sneak attack dice and then the creature takes damage equal to the roll. Rules as written, rules as intended, you know, these things may come into play here. Definitely discuss it with your DM. Me personally, I'd allow it. It's not like rogues are overpowered, but I won't assume that we're using Cunning Strike on a second target on our turn regardless, because I'm going all out for damage, right? I'm not even going to assume that we're using it on our primary target, but you might be able to. And if so, cool. As for what those Cunning Strike options are, Poison forces a Constitution save or the target has the poisoned condition for 1 minute. Really great, especially if they succeed on their save against being frightened by you, right? Since being frightened and being poisoned are very similar debuffs in that they both force disadvantage on attacks and ability checks. There's Trip, which forces a dexterity save or knocks them prone. Definitely worth using if you're all out of Hill Giant Goliath trips, for example. And then there's Withdraw, which lets you move up to half your speed without provoking opportunity attacks. Less useful on rogues who kind of reliably have their bonus action free for cunning action, but since we basically never will, could be really nice sometimes. Don't forget, our sneak attack does go up to 3d6 here. At level 11, we would be a rogue 6. That means we get expertise, more expertises. Go ahead and PYF here. I think I'd probably take like investigation and acrobatics, but pick your favorites. At level 12, we would be a rogue 7, and that means we get evasion, which says that we take half damage on a dexterity save if we fail the save, and no damage if we succeed. Really great when fireballs are flying. And then we also get my favorite rogue feature of them all, Reliable Talent, which just says that if we have proficiency in a skill and roll lower than a 10 on a check, it just counts as a 10. And we've got a lot of proficiencies and expertises. Coupled with this, we're just incredible skill monkeys. Don't forget, sneak attack goes up to 4d6 here. At level 13, we would be a rogue 8, and that means we get another feat, and there are so many that I want. If we were truly concentrating on Summon Beast, maybe even if we weren't, but especially in that scenario, I'd definitely be looking to bump concentration via Resilient Constitution, or maybe Warcaster, even though numerically, Resilient Constitution is better at this level for a concentration than advantage on concentration checks from Warcaster. I'd be tempted to lean that route so that we could bump our Wisdom to 16. That said, next level, that concentration check advantage is going to become redundant. So I'm probably only going Warcaster if the campaign is ending here, right? Regardless, I'm going to assume that we're getting something that's going to bump our Wisdom by 1 so that we can get it to a 16. You know, maybe even just go +1 Wisdom, +1 Constitution, and then take Resilient Constitution next time we get a feat. Whatever. You'll never take Resilient Constitution so long as bumping Wisdom would give you even the tiniest damage increase. Oh, you know me so well. Because yeah, it would, right? It would increase our pet's hit chance if we're using Summon Beast. There are other reasons to have a high Wisdom. It's going to improve the DC of our Frighten, right? So maybe especially as a Hollow Warden Ranger, a high Wisdom is awesome. Anyways, yeah, I'm assuming a Wisdom half feat or +1 to Wisdom, +1 to Constitution. Okay. At level 13, it is time for our next damage report. Since last check, we've added 2d6 to our sneak attack, which, remember, will benefit us on our turn, especially as a Phantom Rogue, that can hurt a second target, right? And on our reaction if our enemy hurts us or an ally. But beyond that, all of our buffs have been of the survivability and utility variety in these last few levels, which isn't a bad thing. But my spreadsheets are a little sad about it. Just a little. At this point, averaged over 4 rounds against enemies with a 10 AC, we would do 86 damage per round. And against a 17 armor class, it would be 78 DPR total, right? Still with only a little bit of that going to a secondary target. And that's some decent scaling, but it's still not scaling quite as well as other tier 1 builds, dropping us more to like middle of tier 2 by comparison at this level, which is still really, really good. Make no mistake. But yeah, it's hard for rogues and rangers to keep up damage-wise, unfortunately, even with a 50% chance at an opportunity attack every round. That said, we're still beating out other rangers to date and most rogues here, with the exception being that Doom Scroller who had unlimited access to 2-strike scrolls, which feels generous, right? And I suppose the recent Sentinel rogue, who was getting slightly more reliable reaction attacks at this level, according to my assumptions anyways. But hey, we are in solid company at tier 2, so let's figure out what we might do with this build coming down the home stretch. At level 14, we would be a Rogue 9, and that means we get more subclass features. Man, it has been so long since we've had a subclass feature. And Phantom Rogues get 2. Tokens of the Departed gives us 2 tiny objects called Soul Trinkets, which we can use in a variety of ways. We can destroy one to use Wails from the Grave without spending a use of that feature, right? Which is nice. But also, we now have advantage on death and constitution saving throws while we have at least one trinket on us, so don't destroy them both. Always make sure you have at least one, right? That's huge. And yeah, why I caution against taking Warcaster last level, right? We can also destroy a trinket with an action and cast the Augury spell without needing components. Some nice utility there. Now, we can regain spent trinkets by simply using our reaction when someone within 30 feet of us dies. But it does take our reaction, which we prize very highly, right? So maybe just do this as combat is winding down and the battle is all but won to restock your supply if need be. Or sure, if no enemy within 5 feet of you manages to deal damage to anybody. But then we also get the Voice of Death feature here at this level, which says that we can cast the Speak with Dead feature once per short rest. We can even cast the spell to use it to talk to the soul that died to create one of our soul trinkets if we want, which is pretty cool, actually. Make sure you keep track of which soul is in which trinket, right? Anyways, don't forget, sneak attack goes up to 5d6 at this level too. But at level 15, I think I might want to do a little more multi-classing now. You could stay rogue. The level 13 Phantom feature, Ghost Walk, is pretty great if you're going to level 18 and beyond, right? More sneak attack dice is great, more feats, etc. Or, sure, back to Ranger for reasons we've already discussed. But if we wanted more damage, we're just going to get more mileage out of fighter levels at this point than anything else for reasons we'll discuss as we go. So let's pretend that we're just going to keep pushing for more damage above all and see what it looks like. As a fighter 1, we would get weapon masteries, PYF, 3 more. And we also get another fighting style. That's fun. I'd probably go with defense to add 1 more to our AC, or maybe blind fighting, which is always handy. especially on a Goliath who has no dark vision, right? Finally, we get Second Wind, which lets us twice per day, recovering 1 use on a short rest, use our bonus action to heal a d10 plus our fighter level. It's still decent. I mean, we can use it between combat encounters too, right? At level 16, we would be a fighter 2, and that means, yeah, we get action surge. This is one good reason for going fighter, as it always is, since getting to take an additional action once per short rest is always great. Admittedly, this doesn't do a ton for us, since so much of our damage is coming from sneak attack and our reaction, and less so from just our weapon attacks, which are only doing a d6 plus 5. Not counting any bonuses from magic weapons, of course. And actually, considering that Hunter's Mark would make Action Surge a little stronger, at this point, you really might want to just use Hunter's Mark over Summon Beast if you weren't already. Just wait to Action Surge until you've got your mark up, right? The average damage over a 4-round combat encounter is basically a wash as a result, if you've got Action Surge available. But then finally, for us, at level 17, we get our fighter subclass, and we're going Battle Master. Of course we are, primarily because it would give us more ways to get a reaction attack. So as a Battle Master, we get Student of War, first of all, which gives us an additional tool and skill proficiency, yay. And then, Combat Superiority, which gives us 4 superiority dice, d8s, right, that reset on a short rest, as well as 3 maneuvers to learn that we would be spending those superiority dice on to augment our attacks in some way. As for which maneuvers to learn, I would go with Riposte, which lets us get a reaction attack when an enemy misses us, and also deal that superiority die in damage. Brace, which gives us a reaction attack when an enemy first enters our reach, and extra damage. And then 1 of Trip Attack for yet another chance to knock them prone and damage. Menacing Attack for 1 more potential way to frighten enemies and extra damage. Or Precision Attack for the chance to turn a miss into a hit if need be. Because, as great as staying rogue would have been to get 1 more d6 of damage for sneak attack before the end of the build, we just end up getting a lot more mileage out of increasing our chance at a reaction attack so that we can double up on that sneak attack in the first place, right? Not to mention getting an extra d8 once per turn thanks to that superiority die, which I'll assume we're getting. Now, you may find at your table that your percentage at a reaction attack is a lot higher than 50%, and if so, I'd probably pass on the fighter levels. I'd probably just stay rogue until the end, but otherwise, if this can take us from a 50% chance at a reaction to, say, a 90% chance, which is what I'm going to assume, then it's definitely worth the investment. Especially considering the bump from the superiority dice and action surge as well, right? Right. Now, some of you might be wondering why I haven't been taking the Sentinel feat. That's kind of a reaction thing, right? It is really nice, but it's a little bit redundant with the Hollow Warden. Sentinel says that when an enemy next to you makes an attack against an ally, we get to take an attack against them. Most of the time, we're just not going to benefit from that. Because Hollow Warden gets an opportunity attack if they just deal damage to anybody, right? That's in our party. Sure, with Sentinel, you also get to reduce their move speed to 0 if you hit them with an opportunity attack, but again, I just don't think that we need that much on this build. If you like it, if you want it, go for it. Maybe that's the thing that replaces Dual Wielder, right, back at level 4. Anyways, I just figured that I'm probably going to get some comments on that, so I might as well address it now. Anyways, at level 17, we are at our final damage report. Since last check, we've added 1 more die to sneak attack, meaning we would do 5d6 to our target and 3d6 to a second enemy on our turn only. Action surge for a little bump to 1 round of combat, 1d8 damage per round from our maneuver potentially, and above all, increased our reaction attack chance from a 50% to an almost guaranteed, I think, 90% chance. If they deal damage to anybody, reaction attack. If they enter our reach, reaction attack. If they attack us but miss, reaction attack. One of those 3 things is going to happen almost every round with an enemy next to us. We've also gained some really nice utility and defense. Again, that's sweet, but at this point, if we average our damage over 4 rounds of combat, against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 111 DPR, and against an 18 AC, it would be 104 damage per round. We did it. We broke the century mark. I was a little nervous that we wouldn't get there, actually. And compared to other DPR builds that I've done to date at this level, that's still tier 2 territory, but hey, we didn't drop to tier 3. That feels like a win on a mostly rogue ranger build. Come on. with tons of great utility, some solid survivability, and some nice little bit of backup support potential too. So let's break it all down with some final thoughts. The tier score for this build, if you take the damage they do against every enemy armor class we calculate for at each of the 4 damage reports, just average it into one big number, we end up with a 67, which is like middle of tier 2, but among some great company. They're in there with the Vengeance Pally, the Arcane Sniper. This is really solid. But as always, there's a lot more to talk about than the numbers, so let's get into it, shall we? On the one hand, that damage is pretty dang solid, especially for Rangers these days. To be fair, Rangers in general do great through level 5 or 6, but they tend to fall off pretty sharply after that. And the nice thing about this build and this subclass is how much lift they can get from that greatly increased chance at a reaction attack. And when coupled with a rogue, who traditionally also struggles with scaling into late game, right? Compared with most other classes, anyways, I know they scale, don't at me. It's just the scaling of sneak attack doesn't keep up with a lot of other dedicated damage dealing builds. Anyways, right, when you take this great feature from the Hollow Warden and combine it with a rogue who can scale better than most rogues, even as a phantom, right, for total damage, the result is some pretty respectable damage scaling on 2 classes that on their own struggle a bit, yeah? And I really love finding that synergy. On the other hand, sure, there are some weaknesses to this build, no doubt. They've got decent survivability with the little AC bump, and maybe especially the decent chance at consistently frightening enemies nearby, right? So they'll have disadvantage on attacks against us, among other things. But the lack of concentration protection is absolutely a problem, and would very likely have a big negative impact on these damage numbers that I've been touting, without perhaps some help from your party, the Bless spell. I'd kill for a Mind Sharpener from a kind-hearted artificer, right? And so as a result, a more practical build here might be to start Fighter 1 instead of Rogue, especially if you're planning on going with Summon Beast. And then staying Ranger until at least 7 to get an additional bump to our Constitution saves equal to Wisdom modifier, right? But, you know, the problem here is, if you went Ranger 7, well, you're going to want to go to Ranger 8 for the feat. Then you're going to want to go Ranger 9 for 3rd level spells. And then you might as well stay till 11 because the Hollow Warden level 11 feature is pretty good. And then just a couple levels later at 13, you'd get 4th level spells, which would give a nice bump to your beast's damage, among other things. And the level 15 Hollow Warden feature is really good. I'm going to have to build around that one day. Just straight up extra damage to every attack. And suddenly this is a totally different build, right? Like, much less of a stalkery striker and more of a melee gishy warrior, which, hey, not a bad thing. You're probably even wearing medium armor in this case, at least until you get your dexterity capped. Going that route would be less average damage at most levels of play, but not a ton, and better survivability and a way better ability to hold on to concentration for sure. So, you know, perhaps the simpler route, if we want to kind of stick with this Ranger Rogue thing, as I've been discussing all along, would be to simply forgo Summon Beast and just stick to Hunter's Mark. But yeah, without home brewing that spell to, at the very least, not require our bonus action to transfer it, it just feels a little clunky to me. At least with the dual wielder feat, so sure, grab Mage Slayer at 4 instead of dual wielder, maybe Sentinel. And then just be content with only 3 attacks every round via Nick, right? And keep enjoying really respectable damage, maybe some additional control and or saving throw survivability, right? And then just don't lose too much sleep over maybe dropping concentration. The reality is that your damage would be almost as good going that route as what I've been reporting on, and you wouldn't have the same level of frustration with bonus action traffic jams and feeling like you needed to start Fighter and or take Warcaster early on, which would slow down your dexterity and damage progression, right? In the end, whichever version of this build that you go with, you're going to be hitting hard, hitting fast, withstanding a decent amount of enemy attacks, which will often fail, debuffing baddies, occasionally supporting and healing allies in a way that I think would be super effective, super versatile, and above all, super fun. So hey, again, you know, kudos to WotC for making the strongest Ranger subclass in 5.5 and giving a nice polish to a fun and potent older rogue subclass too. Hopefully it is a sign of good things to come. But that's the build for the week. I hope you enjoyed it. I love you guys. I do. Thank you so much for all that you do for me and for the channel. It means the world to me. It really does. I hope that you'll have a great day and a fantastic week. And if you don't, please hang in there, okay? Don't give up. You've got this. You've got this. I hope that you will do good and be kind and that I see you again really soon. But until then, take care. Bye. Strangers in the night, exchanging glances, wandering in the night. What were the chances we'd be sharing love before the night was through? If I were a little cleverer, or maybe had a little more time on my hands, or energy, I suppose, I'd do a good, parody of that Rangers in the Night. Ever since I saw that title suggestion, I've been singing that song a little more quickly to greatly increase except for now, except for rules as written, I'm going to say because Hollow Warden gets a, wow.